Let's just jump right in. The construction of long-term wealth, well, it's almost never loud. It's not flashy. Today, we're doing a no-bluff, documentary-style explainer on a concept known as the silent architecture of long-term wealth construction. We're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible, everyday forces that mechanically shape our financial realities over decades. Look, this isn't about getting rich quick or day trading or trying to guess what the stock market is going to do tomorrow. Instead, we're taking a deeply realistic, sobering look at how true financial security is actually built behind the scenes, way away from the highlight reels and curated lifestyles we see everywhere. We're talking about the fundamental gears that either propel us forward or, honestly, hold us back.
Okay, so consider two people. Let's call them earner A and earner B. Now, for 15 years straight, both of them earn the exact same salary. They work in similar fields, and they bring home the exact same amount of money every single month. But fast forward a decade and a half, and their lives look totally different. Earner A, they're financially secure. They've got investments quietly building in the background, a solid safety net, and maybe most importantly, a profound sense of peace of mind. Earner B, on the other hand, is completely trapped. They're living paycheck to paycheck, heavily burdened by consumer debt, and just living with that constant, exhausting, low-grade anxiety that comes with financial instability. Basically, earner B is literally one unexpected medical bill or sudden car repair away from a total crisis. Same exact income, totally opposite financial destinations.
Which really forces a tough question, right? Why do identical incomes lead to such wildly opposite fates? Well, the answer is almost never a sudden windfall. It's not a brilliant startup idea, and it's definitely not a lucky inheritance. We're not talking about one massive, life-altering event here. Instead, this huge divergence comes down to an invisible architecture of daily decisions. It's the silent machinery of our routine choices just grinding away in the background, day after day, year after year. Every single financial decision we make, no matter how tiny it feels in the moment, acts like a brick. And over a decade, those bricks are either building a fortress of security or a prison of limitation.
And honestly, that invisible machinery, it really often works against us through micro expenses. It is incredibly easy to overlook the slow financial drain of routine conveniences. We're talking about the frequent food deliveries because cooking just feels too tiring after a long day. Or those unused digital subscriptions that silently auto-renew in the background every month. The impulse online shopping when you're bored. Or emotional spending utilized as a quick way to relieve stress. Look, in isolation, a $20 purchase feels totally negligible. It barely even registers on your bank statement. But that is exactly the trap. When you add them up, these tiny, consistent leaks slowly and systematically drain away your underlying capacity to build future wealth. The capital you absolutely need to build financial freedom is instead bled out through 1,000 tiny cuts.
This brings us to a really sobering reality. Compounding does not only work in investing. Habits also compound. We're conditioned to celebrate compounding as this financial miracle that multiplies our wealth over time. But the exact same mathematical principle works in reverse. Our daily, undisciplined financial habits compound against us just as relentlessly. Think about it. When a $30 subscription goes unused for a whole year, it is not just $360 lost today. It actually represents the thousands of dollars that capital could have become if it had been invested and allowed to grow over the next 2 decades. You aren't just spending present-day dollars. You are literally permanently forfeiting your future security.
Now, beyond our personal habits, there's a massive systemic force silently eroding wealth, and that's inflation. Let's talk about the very real, destructive reality of a 50% loss in purchasing power. Based on the financial heuristic known as the Rule of 72, an average annual inflation rate of around 6% effectively halves the true purchasing power of your money in just 12 years. It is a quiet, continuous tax on your uninvested capital. If your money is just sitting idle, waiting indefinitely to be spent, it isn't actually holding its value. In just over a decade, you are quietly losing half of that wealth's actual real-world utility.
And this is where a stagnant bank balance provides a massive illusion of safety. The number on the screen isn't going down, right? So it creates this false sense of security. But when we project this reality out over a 10-year timeline, things look very different. While that stagnant cash balance stays completely flat, the fundamental costs of simply surviving, rent, healthcare, food, and education, those are rising exponentially. This dynamic mechanically guarantees that keeping all of your assets in a zero-yield holding pattern is literally a mathematically certain way to lose wealth. The nominal number in the account might be identically what it was a decade ago, but your ability to actually survive on it, that completely collapses under the weight of a changing economic reality. So we end up with this massive psychological conflict. Modern society actively conditions us to prioritize status, luxury, present comfort, and social media validation. Literally every algorithm and advertisement is optimized to trigger our desire for immediate gratification. But on the flip side, the behaviors that actually build structural wealth, things like consistency, future security, and delayed gratification, those are rarely celebrated. The modern distraction economy literally trains consumers to trade their long-term future stability for temporary present-day comfort. We're living in a system that profits immensely by convincing people that appearing successful today is somehow more important than actually being secure tomorrow.
And this psychological trap perfectly fuels what we call lifestyle inflation. That's the tendency to increase your expenses and upgrade your lifestyle at the exact same rate that your income rises. So you get a raise at work and boom, it's immediately absorbed by a more expensive vehicle. You get a promotion and suddenly you're signing a lease on a luxury apartment. The extra capital never actually reaches an investment account. Instead, it creates this endless, totally exhausting treadmill. A higher salary just leads to accumulating more expensive liabilities, trapping people in a perpetual cycle of working harder and harder just to maintain a permanently fragile financial state.
The unglamorous reality of wealth creation is that it is completely devoid of instant excitement. There are no dramatic shortcuts. The mechanics of it are, by design, emotionally boring. Real wealth construction takes immense, persistent patience. It's about automating your investments so the money is routed away before it can even be spent. It's reviewing budgets calmly and refusing to alter a strategy just because of a fleeting trend. It is a remarkably slow process of emotional control and structural discipline. You basically have to repeat the same basic, sensible, completely unexciting steps month after month, year after year, and you have to do it without requiring applause or immediate validation.
Because of that exact reality, the defining characteristic of successful wealth accumulation is consistency, not intelligence. You really don't need to be a financial genius, possess insider knowledge, or somehow perfectly time the market to build unshakable security. The true advantage goes to the individual who can simply maintain discipline, staying the course, ignoring the constant noise of the news cycle, and deliberately avoiding emotional panic during the inevitable market corrections. That is what rewards the patient investor far more than sheer intellectual brilliance ever could. The strategy only works if your behavior remains completely consistent when circumstances become difficult.
And when you actually visualize compounding over a 15-year horizon, you see why it's so difficult. The initial years are fundamentally the most dangerous. For the first several years, the growth is painfully flat and nearly invisible. Now, the math is working, but the absolute numbers are so small that progress feels completely non-existent. And this prolonged period of invisible growth is exactly why most people just quit. They invest diligently for 3 or 4 years, they fail to see life-changing exponential results, and subsequently, they stop. But the mechanics of compounding demand that you survive that exact phase. That massive exponential upward spike in the later years only materializes if you can survive those boring, psychologically taxing flat years.
But if you do survive those flat years, eventually you cross a distinct mathematical threshold. There is a specific tipping point where the returns generated by your investments begin to produce their own significant returns. Decades into this process, your original capital becomes almost secondary. The accumulated growth is doing the heavy lifting now. The money you previously earned is now mechanically working to generate its own massive capital. Reaching this specific threshold is the ultimate structural reward for enduring the boring years, and is the exact mechanical difference that permanently separates the truly wealthy from everyone who remains financially stuck.
Ultimately, all of this forces a very deliberate choice regarding your overarching life philosophy. You have to choose between the short-term thrill of appearing wealthy to strangers and the invisible, long-term peace of actual financial security. True financial maturity is marked by a definitive shift away from chasing external status. It requires letting go of the need to maintain a highly visible highlight reel of consumption. Instead, the focus turns entirely inward. All resources and decisions are redirected toward protecting your internal peace of mind, ensuring absolutely that your future is insulated from the panic of financial scarcity. The architecture of wealth is ultimately defined by a very simple truth. Financial stability is not built through one lucky moment, nor is it destroyed by one single mistake. It is quietly built, or quietly dismantled, through small daily decisions repeated for years. Every single dollar you allocate is a reflection of a deeper priority. Are the choices you are making today mechanically building structural wealth, or are they slowly draining it away? The invisible choices made over the next 24 hours will silently architect a future financial reality. So what kind of architecture are you building?